Hello.
Hello.
Hello. How you
Hello.
doing?
I'm
Hello.
doing well. I'm doing well. I see it's still a weekday today,
It's
isn't
an
it?
it's, do you like this? I thought I'd try my second wig, you know, see how
I
that
love it.
goes.
Very 90s.
So funnily enough, I'm going to go to a hairdresser and get them trimmed because they're clearly like badly cut wigs, but it amuses me. I'm going to turn
I
out
love the
down my light.
90s.
It's a bit bright. I think people are starting to appear. So I'm just going to turn out my light and maybe you can have a chat with them.
All right. Well, folks, welcome to the session. Welcome to the session. So, this is our weekly Day One Careers free Amazon interview coaching with Gigi and myself, Evgeny. So, we're both the co founders of Day One Careers. And by now, you probably should know who we are, where we come from. But in case you don't, so Gigi and I both used to be Amazonians. We used to be hiring managers. We were prolific interviewers, and then on top of all that, Gigi was also a bar raiser, which means that she was a much more prolific interviewer, and she had the veto power over Amazon's hiring decisions. So she was probably very popular with hiring managers. I know because I was one.
I'm popular
Anyway,
with everybody. Everybody loves me.
so at some point in time, Gigi and I both realized that actually there are too many candidates with amazing functional profiles who just don't have the right interviewing skills, and it's a big shame because even if you have a great functional profile but you don't have the right interviewing skills, chances are you're not going to do well in an interview. So both Gigi and I created interview training and preparation businesses. Hers was called Amazon Interview Wiz Academy. Mine was called Day One Careers. And then at some point in time, one of the clients who we both helped actually said to both of us that you guys are the most credible in the industry. You should meet up. And we met up, and then we decided that we need to merge our businesses together. So there you go. Welcome to the enhanced combined Day One Careers, where we try to make the best Amazon interview expertise available to all. Anything to add, Gigi, or was that about okay?
That's okay. That's cool. Yeah, I think everyone probably broadly knows our content anyway. Otherwise, they wouldn't have made it to this session. So yeah, I think you have it well covered, Yevgeny. Would you like me to do the whole rule set for the old
Yeah, why not?
session? Okay, I'm just trying to. I'm also trying to fix my camera as well because
No, it's okay. I can keep going if you want. So can fix your tech up. So folks, the housekeeping rules of the house here is that basically we are happy to answer any questions that you have about specifically behavioral interviews at Amazon. So we're not functional experts, and Amazon hires across many different functional families. And so if you come to us and you say to us that you have an interview for a construction manager for AWS data centers next week, do we have any insights on what functional questions we'll be asking? Unfortunately, we don't, because we have no idea about building data about building data centers. But if you come to us and you say, and on the other hand, if you come to us and you say, "Hey, I've got my loop next week. Do you have any tips?" So with generic questions like that, we do have plenty of tips, but they're all in our YouTube channel. So for us to be able to add value to you guys today, just keep it behavioral. So we're happy to answer any questions about behavioral interviews and some hygiene questions that Amazon uses during your phone interviews. And please just make it a little bit more specific rather than just asking for very generic overall tips. Anything you'd add?
that's it. I
Cool.
really need to do something about my lighting. Your lighting is so much better than mine.
Yeah, I think I don't know. My lighting changes. The way I look at my lighting changes depends on which screen I put my my face on. So I don't even know. I just stopped trying to fix it. But folks, while we were fixing our lighting, so the way that this works is, there's a chat here in this live stream wherever you are. So if you're LinkedIn, just use your comments underneath the stream. If you're on YouTube, use the chat and paste your questions about Amazon interviews. We are here for you. We're happy to answer any questions that you have. So, just as we were talking about generic questions, someone asks us, you have an interview for a business analyst role. Do you have any tips for preparation? Yes, please go to our YouTube channel. Plenty of tips there for your behavioral interviews. But if you have anything more specific, then feel free to ask us here. Meanwhile, we have Svetlana in here. Svetlana, hello. So please tell me why Amazon recruiters don't practice feedback, because by doing this, they could create more motivated future employees who are ready to invest money in improving their skills. I don't know. I think it has something to do with Amazon not wanting to have lawsuits coming from candidates. Is that what it is?
Yeah, I mean, it's a couple of things. So just whilst we're answering this question for Svetlana, you folks who are there, and we're a small group again today, just please do bash down your questions. There are no silly questions. We might tell you we can't answer them, but please do bash them down, because of course this session will only last as long as the questions last. So please don't be shy, ask your questions. So Svetlana, okay, so why do Amazon recruiters not give you feedback? Okay, so there's no one's ever, or I've never read an official policy document on why Amazon doesn't provide feedback. I'm not sure a policy document exists. However, there is kind of a shared understanding around the organization based on a little bit of urban myth and some rational logic as to why this would be. So let's start with that. The vast majority of corporate organizations will not provide you with feedback after your interview. It's not just an Amazon thing. I think you'll find that's echoed in lots of other large corporate organizations. And primarily, you can assume really it's because of two things. The first is, to Yevgeny's point, trying not to be sued. Litigation, I don't think, is as popular outside the US as it is inside the US, but Amazon is a US-based company, and their concern is that unless a recruiter is incredibly careful with what they say in terms of feedback, the risk exists that a candidate might misinterpret something that a recruiter has said, or a recruiter might not phrase something as specifically as they need to. Candidate takes offense and decides that this is a reason for a lawsuit. So that's number one, to avoid lawsuits. The second one is, I think, a bit more logical in the sense of, when you are an interviewer having to give feedback on a candidate in order to make an incredibly important decision as to whether your organization is going to hire that candidate, or indeed the candidate is going to join your organization, both big decisions for both parties, they need to be able to feel free and confident to say anything that they need to say and that they feel is relevant. The concern of an interviewer, if recruiters were giving feedback, is that it is possible for a recruiter to give a piece of feedback, a candidate to extrapolate which interviewer gave that feedback, decide they take exception to that feedback, and then pursue that interviewer on social media in order to either get clarification, or even in some cases, some kind of I won't say vengeance, because that's a little bit too dramatic, but you know what I mean. And we're all very accessible through social media these days, and it's very easy to troll somebody. So Amazon has to, and all corporate organizations have to, make sure that their interviewers feel free to say what they need to say, when they need to say it, how they need to say it, without concern of retribution on social media channels. So those are fundamentally the two reasons why any organization isn't going to provide you feedback. The third point I'll make, and lots of people bristle when I say this, but I'm going to say it anyway because it's important to appreciate. It is not the interviewing company's responsibility to help you improve your chances at getting a job. That's not their function. You don't work for them. They have no responsibility towards you. Their job is to find the right person for their role. If they discover that you are not that right person, they have a responsibility to let you know in a timely and respectful fashion. That's it. They have no moral or commercial obligation or benefit to help you improve your interview skills. Now, a lot of people don't like it when I tell them that, but unfortunately, that's the reality. Couple that with the risk associated with being sued and not enabling your interviewers to feel free and comfortable to provide the feedback that they need to give. And all of that comes together to being something that's very rational in terms of an organization not giving feedback. So I hope that helps. I don't know if I have a video about that on the YouTube channel. I might make one.
That's a really good idea. Let's make one. Okay, cool. Do you want to take the next one?
Sure.
Seeing as I skillfully batted this one off to you.
Yeah, didn't you? Yes. Oh, actually, do you know what? Why don't you do this one? Because this is one of
Okay.
your favorite topics. It's about
Ah, yes.
compensation structure.
Money. That's
Yes,
basically
money,
my
money,
favorite
money.
topic.
Yes, I'm all about the morals and the ethics, and you're all about the money.
Cool. All right. I like that. I've heard mentioned on this channel previously about Amazon stock compensation and RSUs. Are you able to describe how this works? Right. So without having to go into a massive long lecture about how Amazon compensation works, so first of all, Amazon's compensation is not superbly unique. It's pretty much the same idea that companies like Apple and a whole bunch of other big tech folks are doing. So rather than just paying you cash every month, they pay you a compensation of cash and then restricted stock units, which are basically promises that at some point in time, Amazon will give you a certain amount of shares and you can sell those shares at whichever point you want after they give them to you, which is what they call a vest. Back in the days, Amazon and a lot of tech companies used to bias the compensation packages quite handsomely towards stock because the expectation was that all these companies are going to grow like crazy, and so if they grow like crazy, the stock price will grow like crazy, and so you'll end up with quite a few folks being multimillionaires, and that's exactly what happened with Amazon. That's what's happening in Nvidia with Nvidia right now. If you know this is the company to be in if you want to be a multimillionaire employee. These days, Amazon has been seen to rebalance somehow their compensation between cash and stock, but stock is still there. So the way it basically works is you join the company, they give you an offer. That offer has cash component and stock component. They tell you exactly how many stocks they're going to give you, and they give you what's called a vesting schedule. So essentially, it's a schedule at which point this stock pot that they give you will become available to you to actually sell. So it comes in parts. I think it's something like 5%, 15%, 25, 25, something like that. It's actually different, I believe, in terms of how many times a year some part of the stock becomes available to you, depending on the level. So L6, L7, I think from L7 it becomes, or from directors level it becomes quoted. I actually don't remember, but it doesn't really matter, right? So what matters is, you have some money in cash, some money in stock. You have a schedule at which you can sell the stock. And that's pretty much it. Where it comes important is when you negotiate, because essentially, when you negotiate your compensation, you should focus not just on your salary or any of the sign-on bonus that they may give you, but also on the stock component. Which is why when you negotiate your salary, use the term total compensation, which basically is everything add up: your salary, your sign-on bonus if you get one, and your stock. So hopefully, in general, that should be in the introduction. Anything you'd add, Gigi?
Nope, that's it. That's it. Okay, so do you know what? Should we just talk about target compensation?
Yes, we can. So target compensation. Okay, so Amazon, like a whole bunch of other companies, by the way, what they're trying to do is when they, they want to make sure that everyone who comes in is compensated fairly. And so in order to do that, they research the market. They try to understand what a fair compensation is for every job family and for every level within that job family. And then they have an idea of this sort of amazing caliber of talent that they want to hire. So they almost like they get these reports in terms of what an average salary is for, let's say, a software developer manager, and they're thinking, well, we want a super amazing software development manager. So they're gonna look at all this distribution curve of compensation, and they're gonna say, right, we're gonna pay them that much, and it's usually kind of the 75th centile that they're I believe they're aiming at. And that is essentially that number somewhere there. So they translate that research into specific numbers, and these numbers within their system, they're called total target compensation, or target. total compensation, and that is the number which essentially represents your salary, sign-on bonus, and this year's allocation of your vested stock that Amazon will try to get you to every year. So, for example, if the stock price goes down, Amazon will top up your stock, your RSUs, so that your annual total compensation will get to that target that they've set. Now, if the stock price goes up, they're not going to take the stock away, but they won't give you any more stock, because obviously you're gonna get more money every year than what their target compensation is. So I think roughly that's what it is.
That's perfect. Cool. Right. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to take the next two because the next one's really quick, and then I'll do the one after that. So, okay. So, hello. Oh, and I'm going to mispronounce that one horrible, aren't I? Anjika? Okay. Ajinkya. We're going to, we've probably butchered it. So I apologize to your parents. We didn't mean to offend you. So, how to answer what would you have done differently for a leadership question? You tell the truth. The answer is going to be different every single time because it's going to depend on the situation that you've just described. So what they're asking, the reason why they're asking the question of what would you have done differently is to try and get a sense of your self-reflectiveness and whether you are able to look back at your actions and your operations and identify opportunities for improvement, and then take those ideas and for improvement that you've identified and apply them into action moving forward. So how you actually answer the question is going to be completely different depending on the scenario that you've just described. But functionally, how you answer the question is you identify something that is a learning from the story that you've just told, and then you explain to the interviewer how you have taken that learning and applied it in a functional way, an actionable way moving forward. So I'll give you an example. Let's say I told a story about, okay, let's say I told a story about joining a new team and going around and meeting people and asking questions, and someone got their feathers ruffled that I didn't meet them at the beginning because they felt that they should have been at the top of the list, and it caused some kind of friction, and I had to rebuild that relationship and smooth the pathway so that I could have a good working relationship with this person moving forward. If the interviewer asked me, well, what did you learn from that, Gigi? I would say, well, I learned from that experience that it's really important to understand the landscape of influencers and decision makers when you join a team, and really understand the dynamic of what's going on inside the team to make sure that you understand whether any of these risks of offending people, etc., exist before you begin to reach out. That was a really important learning. So what I do now is whenever I join a new team, I create a map of decision makers and influencers, and I research who should be on that map and who in theory I should probably start with before going on to other people in that team. I've been doing that for the past year or two, and I have never had the same problem again. And that's it. That's kind of the formula of how you answer the question, kind of functionally, if you like. But the exact answer to the question obviously depends on the nature of the story that you've just told. Does that make sense, Yevgeny?
Makes total sense.
So I'm just going to flip on to this next one then. So Rista, I think that would be. But anyway, you have an L5 panel interview tomorrow. Yay, congratulations. Well done for making it to panel, loop, final interview. So many different ways of calling that thing. So you wanted to know what kind of questions are welcome if or when they ask you if you have any questions. Can you ask the same question of all 5 interviewers? Okay, so I think any questions are welcome. You must ask questions. It is really important to ask questions. If you don't ask questions, questions will then be asked in the debrief of you in terms of kind of your level of engagement, not necessarily enthusiasm for the role, but overall interest. If you know nothing about a role, then in theory, there should be many, many, many questions that you could ask. What type of questions are welcome? Any question that isn't a question where you're obviously trying to outsmart the interviewer or potentially offend them in some way. So if you want to ask questions about the role, if you want to ask questions about ways of working inside Amazon, if you want to ask questions about the category, if you want to ask questions about, I know, flexible working or network groups or anything like that, kind of anything is a goer as far as questions are concerned. I think I have some advice in terms of the best types of questions to ask. And I think those questions are really the questions that you need the answers to in order to make a decision as to whether you want to be hired by Amazon, if you want to actually work there. Those are the questions that you should really focus your time on. I personally don't purport to the family of you need to ask questions that make you sound really smart, because they'll definitely hire you if you ask the smart questions. It's not necessarily true. The important thing is that you ask the questions that really do tell you what you need to know in order to make a decision to take that role. And that's it. Do you want to pick the next one, Yevgeny? Oh, no, sorry, I missed. Can I ask the same questions to all 5 or 6 interviewers? So yes, you can, but obviously only the appropriate ones. So if you've got a question like, I'd love to know what your favorite thing about working at Amazon is, for sure, ask everybody that question, because it's super helpful to get multiple perspectives on what different people enjoy about working at Amazon. But questions like, I don't know, could you tell me about the network groups that are available in Amazon? Once someone's told you the answer once, you don't need to ask the next person. So opinion versus fact questions, I suppose. Facts, ask one person. Opinions and experiences, feel free to ask multiple people. Excuse me, Evgeny, I'm going to cough. I'm going to let you take over.
Yeah, that is absolutely fine. Cool. So let's move on. Yes, there's a question here about finance positions. So some behavioral questions are common. Some questions must be asked for financial positions. Are there examples that you know? So it really depends on what you're asking about here. Are you asking about leadership principles related questions, but are phrased in such a way as to kind of get the candidate to bring about some sort of finance related context, or functional related questions for finance positions? So, with regards to functional questions for finance positions, um, I don't really know, and I don't think any of us here know, because again, we're not finance experts. If this was a marketing question, I would answer you. But to be honest, there are thousands of different job families at Amazon. Finance is one of them. And also, there's no such thing as finance, right? Like finance subdivides into, just about everything. FP&R, they're all different kind of branches of finance, not just within Amazon, right? Anywhere within any Fortune 500 finance functions. And you also have the situation where the hiring manager and the hiring team might have their own idea about what sort of functional questions they might want to ask. So it's very difficult to predict. All I would say is I try to find out as much as possible about what the functional requirements are for this role. If the job description is well written, then you should be able to just tease those out of the job description. If it isn't well written, and or if you know who your recruiter is, just ask them that question and just ask them what are the critical functional responsibilities for this role, and essentially expect to be asked during your phone interviews, expect to be asked questions, hypothetical questions, behavioral questions, any sort of questions on those particular leadership functional skills. And then when it comes to leadership skills, it's up to the hiring manager to actually set the list of the important leadership skills for every role. And every finance hiring manager will be different. So stereotypically, I would say, frugality must be important. However, I've known candidates who interviewed for finance roles where frugality wasn't asked. So again, I think the best thing to do here is to look at the job description, try to tease out the keywords that map to different leadership principles, and that will give you an idea, if the job description is written well, what leadership principles might be important for that particular hiring manager. We also have a YouTube video on our YouTube channel that teaches you how to do it. I think Gigi just takes a live job description and performs a surgery on it to try and tease out what leadership principles are baked into the job description. And if that doesn't work for you, then Gigi offers a service where she does that. So if you join our community, you'll be able to book it, and she'll do it for you. Have I missed anything? Yeah, you're still on mute.
Perfect. Yeah, no, I've turned it off now. It's all good. Okay, so I will pick this next question. Okay, from Zaina. Hello, you are more than welcome. You've got a question regarding ending of a role due to layoff actions. Would you recommend stating on your resume under your role, I was laid off due to economic conditions and corporate restructuring, not performance related? Okay, so I think there are going to be lots of different schools of thought about this, and I'm not sure that there is any single right answer, because at the end of the day, there's a human being at the other end of reading that resume, and that human being is going to have a particular view, and then a different human being might have another view. I think what I would say is, unless having been laid off kind of create some kind of a flag in your resume. For example, if you're currently not working because you've been laid off, you're clearly going to want them to know that you are currently available and not effectively not working for anybody else, because that means you can start really quickly. And trust me, a candidate that can start really quickly is incredibly appealing in any organization that's trying to hire. So you might, if you are currently out of work and you need to put an end date on your employment, note at the end of the date, part of layoffs or something along those lines. I don't think you need to go into the extent of detail that you're suggesting here, which is laid off due to economic conditions and corporate restructuring, not performance related. I think particularly in tech, everybody is well aware that large corporates and even medium corporates at this stage are shedding volumes of people, and those volumes of people are in the main not poor performers. It was a mass layoff exercise. So I personally don't think that you need to put that amount of detail in it. But if you're currently not working and you will need to put an end date on your employment, otherwise your resume is misrepresenting the truth, you could just put in a little bracket, laid off, and leave it at that. If you went through a layoff a few years ago and there's a couple of months gap in your resume, I personally wouldn't note specifically why I had that couple of months gap, unless someone actually asked me in the interview. But for my current situation, if I had currently been laid off and currently looking for work, I have to note the end date of my employment. So I would put part of layoffs in brackets. That would be my approach. Yevgeny, I don't know if you would recommend something different.
No, I think it's very, very reasonable. All right, let's move on to the next one. So here's a question from Shivangi. So the question is, I am currently preparing for an L7 interview with the hiring manager. I aim to enhance the complexity of my responses to the LP questions. I was wondering if there's a measure of gauge for complexity, such as determining the rating of complexity for my current answer. So first of all, I'm just going to deal with a little bit here. Your aim is to enhance the complexity of your responses. Please do not enhance the complexity of your responses. The response is the same. It needs to be very, very clear. Complexity relates to two things. It relates to picking stories where you were solving complex problems, right? No, not your complexity of your responses or stories, but the situations, the problems that you were solving, right? And you should still communicate your stories in a very clear and understandable, comprehensible way, in simple business English, unless your interviewer is exactly from the same industry. And in terms of picking the right complexity of the problems that you were solving, so unfortunately, there isn't a specific scoring grade. Partly because it is very subjective, and partly because the expectation of the kind of complexity that you'll be able to handle level by level has changed over the years. It's meant to change consistently. It's meant to go up. Hence the expression raising the bar. The bar at Amazon is meant to go up year after year. Whether that's actually the case year after year, we don't know. The jury's out there. I would say there's plenty of folks at Amazon that would say that, the kind of profile that would get you an L7 job 15 or 20 years ago is not the same today. Which leaves us with only one strategy, and that's the strategy that we recommend to all candidates. Now, imagine your career, right? Like your professional career as a series of different situations that you will convert in stories, right? And imagine they're a complexity scale for your stories where specifically in your career, right? Not in someone else's career, but in your career, right? And so imagine you have your own complexity scale from 0 to 100, right? It doesn't really matter. It could be 0 to 10, 0 to 100, but imagine that's 0 to 100. And imagine you were to grade the complexity of every situation, every problem that you have solved in your career, right? Let's say last 5 years that you would use for your stories. The stories, the situations that we recommend that you pick for your interview with Amazon needs to be at the very, very top, in terms of the complexity scale. The scale is yours, right? All we're saying is if you want to maximize your chances of that complexity to actually hit the level that you're interviewing for, pick situations where you have solved the nastiest, meanest, most complex problem. And then you just have to let the chips fall where they may. Anything you'd add, Gigi?
Nope. Perfect. Perfect. Now, okay, so we're about the halfway mark. So it's that special time of the show.
Special time of the show.
I'm just going to pause momentarily, folks, and just ask you a big, well, it's not a big favor. It's a tiny favor. So as I'm sure you realize, an enormous amount, hundreds of hours has gone into building this channel so that we can help you folks out totally free and give you the insight that we have to offer that you're not going to get in terms of quality pretty much anywhere else. And we're proud of that, and we're very happy to do it. In return, however, we would ask a teeny tiny favor of you, and that is we would love you to show some engagement in our channel. What's engagement? Well, engagement is either giving one of our videos a thumbs up. Hopefully this camera will, woo!
Mine doesn't. I can do this. I can do this. It doesn't do that.
I was going for that one. There we go. It's like one thumb, not that. I'm so amused. Okay, so giving the video a thumbs up or writing a little comment, thanks GG or whatever it is. The reason why we need that is basically it's a trigger for the algorithm to recognize that it's good content and that the algorithm has successfully shown that content to the right person who likes it. That then bumps our content up in terms of the search results and puts us in front of people who really need to see us and basically beat the competition. So we need your help for that. So I'm going to ask you to spend 2 seconds, 3 seconds doing that for this particular stream. And then if you do watch any of our other content, please do just take a second just to give it the thumbs up. But for now, I'm going to give you a couple of seconds to do that. And whilst you do that, I have an amusing little thing for you to watch. It might be a little loud. So if you're wearing headphones, you might want to just pull your headphones off your ears ever so slightly. And I'll play it. And then please do give us a thumbs up. Here we go. Please like the stream now. Please like the stream now. Please like the stream now. Please like the stream. 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 There we go. So if you haven't already, please do give the thumbs up to the stream. Right. Next question then, Yevgeny. I'm just going to pick this one. So this is from Melissa. Oh, Melissa looks like she's having a great time in her profile picture there. Very cool. Right. Is it badly seen to be interviewing for 2 Amazon processes? After being inclined to interview for one role, you are interviewing for another role with a lower level? No, I think it's very clearly expected that people will apply for multiple roles in Amazon. As long as you're applying for the same types of roles, for example, if you're a product manager and you're applying for multiple product managers, that's fine. If you're applying for a product manager, a marketing manager, a finance manager, a category manager, then that looks very odd to recruiters and it gives them the feeling that you're not taking any one of those roles particularly seriously. So I wouldn't recommend applying across multiple different job families. But if you are applying for a single job family, applying for multiple roles isn't unusual. The question around applying for different levels, I do think it's important for a candidate to establish what the right level is for their application. I think if you're seeing a candidate profile where they've applied for a 6, a 7, and an 8, or a 4, a 5, and a 6, you do find yourself kind of asking yourself, okay, like why is it not clear between the candidate and the recruiter, really? Because that's a dialogue between a candidate and a recruiter, what level this candidate's experience is at and what level my role that I'm hiring for is at. Because nobody wants to be interviewing someone for whom it's a complete waste of time. So just be cautious about different levels. And I would definitely, when you speak to recruiters, do your very best to get an understanding of what level their role is operating at, and give them an understanding of the level of your experience. It can be a bit of a fine line, particularly I think between 5s and 6s. There's quite a large overlap in the organization of skill sets at 5s and 6s. So okay, but if you're at 7s versus 6s, the difference between those two should be quite stark. 8s and 7s, the difference between those should be very, very stark. So no, not a big issue. Stick with a single job family. And if you can, try and get some clarity from a recruiter as to what constitutes an L6 versus an L5 or whatever level you're applying for in this particular job family, so you can tighten yourself up when it comes to your multiple applications. Anything to add, Yevgeny?
Nope. Nicely detailed. Okay, cool. So there's a question from Thomas the cat and friends. This is that moment in the show, Gigi. The fancy nickname. So
I'm not
Thomas,
going to say anything about his profile picture.
Thomas the cat.
Thank you.
Looks like a Russian blue cat, by the way.
I would agree.
Yes, hypoallergenic.
I was just
right.
about to say my daughter's been begging me for one because she's allergic to cats, and she's told me that this is a particularly good cat.
My wife is, so we were considering getting one. Cool. So the day after tomorrow, I have an L4 interview for the HR partner. Right now, I'm working as an L3 lead in ops, and my LP are most likely connected to operations. Any tip how to connect LP to HR? Well, I think you'll find it quite difficult to connect your LP to HR, seeing as you've never worked in HR. But thankfully, you don't have to do that. So they're electing to interview you. And by the way, this is not the first one. Gigi, actually, I don't know about you, but this is not the first time that I'm hearing about folks from ops actually moving to HR roles. So it seems to be a thing.
It's definitely a common pathway in FCs.
Which is great, right? Which is fantastic. It's great into great progression, which means that, especially if it's a well-trodden path within Amazon, they are happy to take you in based on the transferable skills that you will be bringing from operations, and they are happy to bet that being an Amazonian, you will pick up the rest of the expertise, especially seeing as this is an entry-level HR job. So there's no need to try and find functional parallels to HR. Just focus on the behaviors that map to the leadership principles and the themes and the facets within those leadership principles, and just be confident that the team that is interviewing you will be happy with taking you in for your transferable skills, being as you've never worked in HR. Anything to add?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I was distracted because I'm planning how to answer the next question. But yeah, if you've never worked in a function, you can't make up stories about working in that function, because that would be lying. So yeah, you don't need to. All right, so Rav here has a question. Right, so you've done multiple mock interviews and you get multiple conflicts in feedback. Yeah, I know that happens. As in star, spending time in S and T and more in A and R, spend minute on each star. What are your thoughts? Okay, so there is a video about this on the YouTube channel, which is what I was checking out while Yevgeny was talking earlier. So it's called Breakdown Amazon Interview Star Stories. So go check out that video. I think I use a burger as an analogy as to how long you should spend on each section. So that,
I like a burger.
Oh, well, who doesn't? Although I think I left out the pickle layer. I love a pickle on my burger, and I don't think I put pickles in this.
Yes.
Yeah, that'll be our our Eastern European roots there, Evgeny, and with our pickled vegetables.
Yes.
um, so, but the reality is it's just the guideline, right? Because the actual length of time that you need to spend on each of those sections is going to depend on the nature of the story. If you have a story that requires a bit of investment in explaining the context because the context itself is relatively complicated, then you're going to need to dwell on the S part of the story much longer than if you have a story where the initial setup and context is really quite simple and obvious. You won't have to spend very long in there at all. So you can take feedback, but the reality is you have to be flexible. You have to look at the story and its own merits and decide, does this story warrant spending a little bit more time on situation so I can make sure that I've got it really clear and really well set up for the interviewer so that they're not confused at all before I even start explaining my goal and my actions? Or actually, is this really quite simple and therefore I can make it really, really tight and crisp and spend no more than one sentence on explaining the situation? So go check out the video on the YouTube channel. I think it was published on the 28th of April 2022. But it's only a guideline. You have to apply some dynamic intelligence to your decision making around this and determine on a case-by-case basis what length of time it's worth spending on each of the individual sections. Yeah?
Makes sense. Makes
Cool.
sense. Right. It's next one for me, isn't it?
Yes.
Cool. All right. So yeah, just a quick Q&A here. Can I recommend your CV review service to a friend who's not applying to Amazon, but a similar tier one company such as Microsoft? Yes, you can. The review service is optimized for any hyper competitive employer where there are thousands of applications per job, so that your CV is optimized for a high-speed review by recruiters and managers to do that. So yes, any such place, top startups, Fortune 500s, do recommend it. And then the question that we're gonna do is, so I finished the first loop and I'm preparing for another loop. Oh wow, L5, and your agent gave your advice on bar raiser as following, which I found difficult to balance between simplifying the stories and giving specific details, which will eventually go to specific. Do you have any feedback on this? I think, yeah, and the advice is this one. I think they kind of got in between these.
I think there's two more parts of this after
Yeah, yeah,
that.
yeah. We'll pull together. So that they're the bar raiser. Please avoid using industry-specific terminology metrics. Please make sure the stories are delivered in easy-to-understand language. Bar raiser assesses how well one communicates with stakeholders from different functions and businesses. Right. So, okay.
I disagree with that last statement fundamentally.
Yes. This one's weird. I won't lie to you, because bar. To be honest, Gigi, you were a bar raiser. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the way that your bar raiser is meant to evaluate your responses is exactly the same as just how anyone else is meant to evaluate your responses. It's just the bar raiser has a unique reference point and a trusted position within the organization, so that their vote, in case it's a no hire, is the final one, right? That's why they have the veto. But in terms of what they're trying to get out of this interview is the same as anyone else. Is this person an Amazonian? And does this person, or will this candidate raise the bar at this particular level in this job? Right? Is this ballpark correct?
Yeah, so I mean, yes, you're absolutely right, Yevgeny. You just need to think about the bar raiser as the quality assurance person in the process. You know, with any kind of manufacturing process or output process, somebody has to be the quality assurer. That's the role of the bar raiser. They are responsible for quality assurance. That's it. Right. So they are not testing you for anything different to anybody else. They just assure the quality of the decision that's being made to hire you or not hire you. Looking at this final point about them saying the bar raiser assesses how well one communicates with stakeholders from different functions of businesses, that's not universally true. That is not the job of the bar raiser universally in the process. Maybe giving this recruiter the benefit of the doubt, what they're suggesting here is that the bar raiser is going to be assigned earned trust. And the earned trust leadership principle is the leadership principle I don't work there anymore, they go to in order to be able to understand your ability to communicate clearly with stakeholders and different functions in the business. So giving the recruiter the benefit of the doubt, if that's what they mean, then fine. They're telling you that the bar raiser is going to be assigned earned trust, and therefore you need to be really careful about your communication style with them, particularly because they're not going to be from your technical space. But so that everyone else is clear, it is not universally the bar raiser's function to always test for earned trust or calibrate your ability to communicate with stakeholders cross-functionally.
I would sign up for that 100%. Which brings me to this part.
Good. Yeah, I was going to ask you. Let's reel back to that part. Yeah, go on.
Yeah. So this one is, so please avoid using industry-specific terminology and metrics. Yeah, that's really good advice. But why keep this advice for the bar raiser? Just use it for everyone.
Well, I disagree with it as advice, actually, because it's impossible. How can you avoid using industry-specific terminology and metrics? So let's pretend you and I, Evgeny, are interviewing for a marketing role, and we're talking to a bar raiser about, and let's say they're not in marketing, let's say they're a software development engineer, and we're talking to that particular interviewer about a marketing campaign that we did where our goal is click-through rates, right? That's your goal, click-through rates. And you're going to have impressions in that. You're going to have click-through rates in that. You're going to end up with conversion in that. These are all marketing specific KPIs that you are going to have to talk about because
Yes.
they're part of the story. If you don't talk
Yes.
about them, then you literally can't open your mouth because there's no story without telling the actual context of the story. So I actually think this is really bad advice. What I would say is you are inevitably going to have to talk about specific terminology and metrics to do with your particular functional area. What you need to make sure that you do is make sure that your interviewer understands what you mean by that metric. So I'm trying to think up a random metric that I don't use in marketing, but they use in operations. So let's talk about if I was in HR,
Weeks of cover.
Yeah, weeks of cover, total labor costs, TLC. If you need to talk about total labor costs and you're in an HR function or in a finance function, you just explain to me, okay, so I was being measured on TLC. TLC stands for total labor cost. Total labor cost is all about how much we pay for our employees in terms of salary, averaged out by the number of employees that we have. Fine. I don't have to be a finance expert to understand what you mean now by total labor cost, and you can continue on in your story. So I fundamentally disagree with this advice. I think it will make it almost impossible for a candidate to come up with stories if they try to avoid talking about anything that's specific to their job, because that's essentially
No, but
what that
I
advice
think
is.
we both agree on what we're trying to say here to this person, and that is, just explain yourself, right?
Just
Like,
explain yourself. Yeah.
well, I fundamentally don't believe that, and this is what I'm seeing with a lot of the coaching candidates that come to me, and that is they start laying terminology from industries that I'm not familiar with, and what I'm trying to do is, rather than telling them don't use it, I'm saying explain it to me. So I'm not in
Sure.
your head, I'm
Yeah,
not in
yeah.
your office, I'm not there. Explain it to me, boil it down to a simple business English, and then of course keep on doing it. And I think that's the second part of this advice, which is please make sure the stories are delivered in an easy to understand language. I think I can support that.
I agree. It's the first statement I disagree with.
Mm,
Please avoid using industry-specific terminology and metrics. I disagree with that. Please make sure you explain industry-specific terminology and metrics, is how I would give someone guidance if I was their recruiter.
yes. Agreed. Cool. Do you want to pick the next one?
Okay. Ooh. That was exciting, wasn't it? A bit animated. Oh, okay. This is one we get regularly, which is, do you think it's okay to give the same example at different stages? Would it be more appropriate to hear different examples at each stage for the same question? Oh, okay. There's a couple of things in there, so let's unpack that. So it's always going to be better to give new examples every time if you can, right? The more brand new examples you give that are strong, the stronger you appear to be in terms of being able to consistently perform at a high level. So of course, yes, it's going to be better if you can always give unique examples. That said, that is a very tall order for the vast majority of people. So the vast majority of people are going to find themselves having to repeat at some point. If you're going to repeat examples, it's better to repeat them between stages, because the only people that get to see your notes from the earlier rounds when it comes to the loop are the hiring manager and the bar raiser. So only those two people are going to be privy to the fact that you've repeated. Now, they may well raise that with the rest of the group and a discussion may well be had, but nonetheless, if you're trying to minimize the recognition of your use of repeats, then that's the best way to do it between rounds. If you have to repeat actually in round, i.e. at loop, our advice is always going to be to try and repeat your situation, but lean into a different leadership principle within that situation. So I often use this kind of fake scenario that I've created of, say, imagine somebody was a Amazon ads account manager and something goes wrong with a campaign that they've sold a customer, and the customer is seeing significantly less impressions than they were promised when the sale was made. The account manager can use that single scenario and create two different stories from it. They can do a dive deep story and tell the interviewer all about how they dove into multiple levels of data in order to identify what the cause was of the reduction of impressions. Or they could tell a different version of exactly the same situation where they talk about earned trust, and they help the interviewer understand how they earned trust with the customer in terms of rebuilding bridges between them, if the customer's really disappointed about the underperformance of the campaign, how they listened to the customer's feedback, how they took action on the customer's feedback, how they accepted responsibility for the failure, all of those types of things. So the same scenario can have two very different leadership principles and two very different sounding stories because the focus is put on two very different leadership principles. If you're going to do that, it is important to try and have very different leadership principles in your story. So dive deep is a very kind of functional, operational leadership principle, whereas earn trust is a much more kind of people communications type leadership principle. Whereas if you were going to try and split one particular story between customer obsession and earn trust, that becomes a bit trickier because both of those leadership principles are much more about kind of human and communication. And then it will start to sound very similar if you try and tell the same scenario through those two different leadership principles. Does that make sense?
Makes total sense. Makes total sense.
Yeah, I want to take the next one.
What's that?
I said, do you want to take the next one?
Yes, yeah. I'm just gonna mention to this LinkedIn user. So this is a question about internal Amazon processes. Just hit me up on LinkedIn. Just ask me, right? And we can have a chat there. But I'm gonna keep the show focused on the external applications. But I'm happy to answer your question if you just hit me up on LinkedIn. Seeing as you're asking the question here on LinkedIn. This is Ruchi, and the question is, I'm interviewing for an L6 interview. However, my peer just got a role as an L7. Should I ask the recruiter if I can be considered for an L7? Well, look, first of all, there's nothing that's stopping you from applying for L7 roles and seeing what happens. But just because your peer got accepted, just got a role at an L7, and that person is your peer in the same company, it doesn't necessarily mean that the same will happen to you, and vice versa. It could have been Again, the situation could have played out completely differently, because at the end of the day, it's down to the recruiter and the hiring manager to judge whether, based on what's on your CV or resume, that they will include you in the application process for an L7 role. And then during your interview, it's down to the hiring manager and the bar raiser to agree that at an L7, you will raise the bar. Right? And everyone's experience is unique, even though your titles might be the same and that person might be your colleague. The one thing you can do is, first of all, you can apply for L7 roles, nothing stopping you. And two, if you have a good relationship with your recruiter, you can just ask them, look, I'm considering applying for some L7 roles. Do you think my profile will work? The one thing that they won't be able to do is, once the role is fixed at a particular level, in most cases, that's the level at which they're going to be recruiting for this role. There are some roles that are level flexible, where, for example, they would post it as an L6, but if the candidate raises the bar at an L7, they might upgrade it, in which case the bar raiser needs to be at the appropriate level in your loop. In these situations, they do happen. They've happened on our watch, but they aren't as frequently happening as those when the roles are down level. So net, nothing stopping you from applying for roles at a higher level, and nothing stopping you from asking the recruiter this question. In fact, nothing stopping you from asking any question to your recruiter. But unless your level is level flexible, and unless there's a bar raiser at an L7 or above, it is what it is. You'll have to interview for an L6 role. Anything you'd add, Gigi?
Nope, absolutely right. Couldn't agree more. Okay, so I'm just going to pull this one up because I don't really understand it. So I'm going to ask the person for some clarification. So Manish, you have a question about choosing among the leadership principles during interview to explain about our past work or projects. I'm from customer service industry, and when I go through the leadership principle, I feel I've used all of them somewhere or other. Manish, I'm confused about why you would choose leadership principles. You don't get to choose them. The interviewer will ask you questions based on the leadership principles. So I'm a little bit confused around the premise of your question. So if you want to ask it in a slightly different way, lower down, I will attempt to answer it. And then moving on to another one I don't quite understand. So Gabriele, where can we find Amazon in story video, please? I stat the one April 20th, 2022. Totally confused. So again, if you just want to clarify what you mean by that, that would be super helpful. And then I will try and answer it for you. So then moving on to one I can answer. So if there's an LP question to which I don't have the answer to, is it okay to tell them? So will it go against you in the decision making? Okay, cool. So again, there is a video about this on the YouTube channel, so you can go there for a more extensive answer. I think it's called What to Do If You Don't Have a Good Answer. But in summary, it is fine to tell them that you don't have a good example for the question. I would suggest this type of response. If you are asked a question, you don't feel that you have a good answer, ask yourself whether you have something that you think is close. If you think it's close, but not quite on the money, explain to your interviewer, okay, I don't think I have an exactly right story, but I think I have one that's close. Can I give you literally a 4-line summary of this story and you can let me know whether you think it'll work? They'll obviously say yes. You give them literally a 4-line summary of the story, and then they'll tell you whether they think it's going to work or if they don't think it will work. If it's not going to work, I suggest you then say, okay, in which case, please can I have another question? I obviously don't want to waste your time or my opportunity on this, so I'd really appreciate another question. So you can absolutely do that. My only caution on it is you can't do it too many times. If you come across a candidate who repeatedly has to ask you for a new question, it's indicative of the fact that they have not got the breadth of experience that you're looking for in an Amazon candidate, because they're not able to answer questions against the scenarios that they're essentially testing you for. How many times is too often? There's no hard and fast number about that. It's very subjective. And I also feel that it varies according to the level at which you're interviewing at. You would be less surprised if a more junior person hasn't been as exposed to as many situations as a person with more tenure behind them. So, broadly speaking, I'm comfortable, or I was comfortable for an L5 to ask for a new question, maybe 2 or 3 times across a loop, maybe even 3 or 4 pushing it. one less for a level above that, one less for a level above that, as a bit of a rule of thumb. But that's my guidance. There's no hard and fast rules about it. And if you ask somebody else, you might get a slightly different number of passes, if you like. Okay, are there any more questions, Yevgeny? Because we are at time, and I
No,
need
but
to...
apparently you've answered Gabrielle's question. Well done,
Oh,
Gigi.
how did I do that?
You did it.
Okay.
There
Okay,
you
hang
go.
on a
That's the power
second.
of
Let me
telepathy.
just... And I wanted to give everyone that link, which was for the... So that link that I've just given out there is for the video that is the burger story about Star. So that's that link for that. So folks, before you all run off, we need to give you an amazing freebie, which we should have told you about at the beginning, and then maybe more people would have stuck around. But oh, and you didn't do the ticker tape. We didn't do the ticker tape today either.
No, we didn't.
Foolish us. All right, so those people that left without staying until the end, they're going to be a disadvantage from you folks who are here to hear this. So we want you to go to this website. Excellent. Well done, Evgeny. And you can pick up a free course there that we've developed. That course is focused on customer obsession. What it essentially does is break down the customer leadership principle for you into its various, we call it facets. That's kind of a learning model that we've created here at Day One, but it's effectively the different types of customer obsession that exist. That will help you identify stories from your career past that align to the leadership principle of customer obsession. It's also going to tell you what the interviewer is really looking for from you in your actual answer, which will help you shape and build out your answer. And then the third part of it is that there is a little mock interview of me interviewing me, no wigs in that situation, but lots of different makeup and clothing. So obviously you won't recognize the difference. And that just shows you how it all comes together in an actual interview. Totally free, gives you access to our community as well, where you can come and meet other Amazonian hopefuls and organize mock interviews with them, etc. Take it. It's totally free. There's just no reason not to use it. Give it to you as a little bit of gift, and we hope that it helps you. And I think that's it for this week then,
That's it.
Yevgeny. All right. So I guess I'll see you all folks next week. If you have an interview coming up, we wish you the very, very best of luck. And you can always get us either on LinkedIn or on YouTube if you have further questions. And we should tell them to use our AI, Yevgeny. Do you want to do a quick
Oh, yes.
quick brief about
I
the
completely
AI? We've
forgot.
only got a few people left now, but hey ho.
Completely forgot. But folks, you're so lucky. So I am just going to post a link here in the chat there into the comments. So, folks, we've just launched our custom GPT. So, if you haven't been living under a rock, you'll know that OpenAI have just launched their GPT store. So, essentially, these are chatbots that can be optimized to do whatever it is that we want them to do. So, we trained this guy on all of the content of our YouTube channel and all of the Amazon-related content of our blog. So the link is there. If you have a subscription to ChatGPT Plus, you can use this bot absolutely for free. Essentially, it comes as part of your subscription. Yeah, let us know how it goes. You should be able to get answers from the virtual Gigi and Evgeny there. So good luck. And I think that's all.
Cool. Yeah. And yeah, it's basically me and Yevgeny in like robot mode. So it'd be like talking to us. All right, folks, thank you so much for joining. Really, really appreciate it. Yevgeny, lovely to see you. I'll catch you later. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.